If Jake listened more intently, he would hear Thelma and Amaka talking just at the entrance of Thelma's room. Settling back into his bed after Amaka had left, he began to compare the qualities of these two girls in his life. He knew quite well that Thelma cannot be compared to Amaka in terms of behavior and composure. Amaka is more principled and careful. He imagined that had it been her that he developed feelings and affections for, she wouldn't have done as much to piss him away. Besides, back in hostel, both girls' pattern of lives were miles apart. Amaka likes to keep to herself and does her things quietly, but Thelma flaunts around boys a lot. It is that attitude of giving nearly every guy access to her and flaunting around new ones that he could no longer tolerate. That's the attitude that has pushed him away from her. He recalled series of incidents where she couldn't control herself around a new guy. The most obvious one being a couple of weeks after he and Thelma settled down in their new lodge. Some guy named Chooks, that happened to be her departmental guy, had invited her over to his house. It wasn't a big deal for Jake. There are no clearly defined lines between them after all, and according to her, Chooks is just a friend. The only problem Jake had with the visit was that she came back late in the night, and he wasn't happy about that. Chooks likes Thelma and was willing to date her, but Thelma has her eyes more on Jake. At least, that's what he believed. The frustration in Chooks' eyes anytime he sees Thelma and Jake can almost be smelt. At some point, Jake could swear that Chooks could hurt him if he gets the chance because of Thelma. But so long as she wishes to be with him, he doesn't give a damn about how any other guy feels about it. Well, it won't be long before all of what Jake thought would start crumbling. In the coming weeks, Thelma visited Chooks 5 times in 2 weeks. 2 was on occasion where there was no clear invitation from him. To complicate issues, she'd always tell Jake anytime she is going to visit Chooks, and this would somehow upset Jake's feelings. While he tried to assure himself that it is for the best interest that she tells him, Jake also couldn't help suspecting that there could be something going on between her and Chooks. But even as much as that thought hurts him, he wouldn't dare to ask. He wouldn't want to cross his bounds. Few times he tried to talk to her about coming home late, more to err on his side of feelings. But then, Thelma always had reasons for staying out that long. On one fateful night, she returned from one of her visits by 10:45 p.m. Jake had already been worried sick, both in thoughts and imaginations, about her whereabouts, or worse, what she could be doing with him. Even still, Jake composed himself and tried to avoid a confrontation. He'd always remind himself, after all, Thelma is not my girlfriend, and I shouldn't ask her too many questions about how she chose to live her life or with who. Jake knew he's only trying to mask away how he feels about she being with another guy. His jealousy was almost perceivable. On that night, when she finally came back, he asked her in a calm voice why she had to stay out so late. "Don't mind that chicks of a boy. I don't even understand what he really wants from me. It's just that we kept talking for a long time," she replied, as the two of them went into her room. Jake, as little sense as he made from her reply, knew that whatever it was that they were talking about, it's never worth staying that long outside in a guy's home. He allowed his thoughts to stroll to another event, this time involving Chuck's roommate. One time when Chuck traveled, his roommate invited Thelma over. Without weighing thoughts, she went over to see him, and the visitation lasted till late in the night. Jake had earlier gone to watch Champions League match, and towards the end of the match, around 10 p.m., he got a call from Thelma requesting that he should come pick her up from where Chuck's roommate was going to drop her off, a distance still further from the lodge. On the way home, she told Jake that the guy she visited almost forced himself on her. Jake wasn't entirely shocked as he listened to her narrate how it happened. He resisted the urge to ask her what she expected from a guy that you stayed in his house for this long, and just continued listening to her. In Jake's own way of thinking, the guy was too stupid to make such a move on a girl he'd be seeing around for the rest of his stay in campus. Just be careful. You know we guys come to a point where we do not think straight anymore. He tried to lighten the situation. Does he really have a girlfriend? Thelma asked, showing more concern about the new information she heard when Jake was discussing with the guy. When Jake got to where Thelma had told him she'd be waiting for him with the guy earlier, he spoke lightly with him and they exchanged pleasantries. It just happened that the Chuck's roommate is someone that Jake had met before and had a chat with. It was from the first time that Jake conversed with him that he learned of his girlfriend that resides in another state. So, as they met this night when he came to pick up Thelma, Jake inquired about that his girlfriend. That was how Thelma got to know that the guy has a girl. Also, there was some sort of awkwardness in his reply when Jake inquired about the girlfriend. Now that Thelma is narrating his first sexual advances towards her, Jake understood the awkwardness in his reply. Yeah, he does. I spoke with her once over the phone, he replied Thelma. Jake was still considering whether to tell Thelma all he knew about the girlfriend, but the words were already coming out on their own. Last time he told me that the girl is planning on coming over to see him. I've seen her picture. She's really cute. Guy self, even with his girlfriend, she should do and come and help him with congeal. She mocked silently and funnily. Jake laughed a little and asked the rhetorical question. Was that why he didn't reply me very well when I told him to greet her for me? He glanced at her from the side of his eyes. I guess so, Thelma replied. He actually told me that he broke up with his girl since last year when I refused to believe that he doesn't have any. Jake seems to let a moment pass, then chipped in. Guilty conscience go worry and well. Thelma, already walking close to Jake, grabbed his palms with hers. They continued discussing the incidents lightly, with more of narration from Thelma as they walked the short distance in the cold night to their lodge. As Jake let this memory fade, he imagined if she'd wanted to take a cue from that potential ordeal experience, that would have been a good place to start. But Thelma, being who she is, was just waiting for the next opportunity to flaunt herself around a new guy, which was exactly what happened in the most recent and still enduring case. His phone beeped with another notification, jolting his memory back to his room. This time, he just stared at the screen as it glowed and faded back to dark screen. He caught the time as it read 3:26 p.m. and he realized he's been lying on his bed for over 30 minutes with nearly all the events of the last 3 months between him and Thelma playing out one after the other in his head. Thelma and Godwin met in Rotaract meetings that she and Jake attended. Jake and Thelma, as newbies, were introduced to other old members, with Godwin being one of them. Jake, who was ever within reach, always saw and knows when she goes on her flaunting spree and those giggling to attract attention from guys. That was how Godwin spotted her, and they got talking. As usual, she told Jake about him and of course defined him as just friend. But then, as time passed, he observed again that she was spending more time and attention on this new guy. Godwin would chat with Thelma on WhatsApp for the whole day and would still call her on phone and they'll talk for hours. One incident that really got to Jake was one night that he was with Thelma, both of them discussing how their day went. The time was about 11 p.m. when Godwin's call came in and Thelma picked. Jake kept his cool and started scrolling through his phone. However, keeping his attention on Thelma and the call, hoping it would not take too long. In the initial part of their conversation, Jake figured when Godwin asked her if she was with him. To his utter surprise, Thelma replied that she wasn't with Jake. The lie to his face was so painful, but he somehow didn't make a fuss about it immediately, hoping to address it when she was done. When she stayed on the call till 12:30 a.m., Jake knew that it was never going to end. Already angry and hurting, he stood up to leave. Thelma abruptly ended the call, having told Godwin to call her back in some minutes. "Wait, I'm sorry, please. Are you hungry?" she said to Jake in between laughter. "Sorry about what?" Jake replied, never turning around. Thelma continued, still laughing intermittently. "I know I just lied that you're not in my..." "Don't worry about that. I understand," Jake interrupted. His hand was already on the door handle. Who talks that long on the phone, ignoring someone that is with them? He mumbled as he left to his room. As usual, he tried to come up with reasons, but Jake was too tired and jealous to really listen. Thinking about the event of that night as he lay on his bed, Jake couldn't help but laugh to himself as he remembered the series of episodes that followed involving Thelma and Godwin. "Same Godwin that you told me is just a friend, yet every now and then you are either speaking or chatting with him. You have a boyfriend, yet I've never seen you spend quarter of the time you spend with Godwin on phone with him. This same just a friend Godwin, you are frequently cooking food and taking with you to his house. He calls and wants you to start coming over to his place. You drop everything else you are doing and fly to his lodge. You go from lecture to his house, from church service to his house, from evening studies to his house. "Jake, we are in," Amaka announced as she opened into his room again, apparently distracting his thoughts. "And you said you are making the dinner, right?" "Yeah, sure," he replied, jolting him back to his room. "Fine then, I can't wait to taste this delicacy." She smiled at him and sat unusually closer to him on his bed. "You know I enjoyed the last soup you made," her voice unusually lower and almost seductive. "You never told me," Jake replied, his voice equally low as he tried to adjust to Amaka's sudden sensual closeness. Jake could swear that his body suddenly stiffened as Amaka's arms rubbed against his. "Well, I did," she continued, maintaining eye contact with him, her voice still low. "I guess Thelma didn't tell you I said so. You were not around that day and she suggested we use your soup for lunch." "Oh, wait." Jake, more alive and aroused now, he edged his face closer to hers as she remained steady. "You two broke into my kitchen, eh?" he joked. "No, not really. You gave Thelma your key, remember? Besides, the taste of that soup was worth breaking into your room anyways," she replied, aware of how close her lips were to his. At this point, Jake couldn't hold back any longer. "Is this still about soup?" His voice calm and a whisper. "Yes, it is still about soup," she replied, her lips almost rubbing against his. "But also about this." She moved her lips and kissed his chin. Then she stood up to go. Jake, unwilling to settle for a kiss on his chin, held her arm and pulled her back into the bed. Amaka didn't resist and just went with him. Then, Jake pulled her close and kissed her on the lips. For almost 3 seconds, their lips were locked in on a kiss. Then Amaka pulled away and stood up from the bed. Without looking back, she made straight for the door and opened it. "I'd like to enjoy this dinner just like the soup." Then she turned around, placing her index finger on her lips. She gave him a smile that says, "You could have more of that," and then closed the door behind her. Ordinarily, Jake would have made dinner just because he likes Amaka. But now, with that few seconds kiss, a kiss that Amaka herself initiated, he knew he has to make this dinner. Returning his thoughts to Thelma and Godwin's episode. "You told me that Godwin has a girlfriend, yet nowadays you sleep in his lodge more times in a week than in your own lodge."